denomination of candidates, and it's now shifted to the new phenomena called recounts that stand into yet another dilemma. The most fresh is the one in Masaka for Masaka District Woman Member of Parliament that saw Justin Namere of the NRM triumphing over Rose Nalubowa of the National Inter-Platform in a way that looked apparently mischievous. We'll be delving into this. Could this dilemma define the future of elections in the country? And how complex are elections becoming, given even the new trend where numbers continue to dive? Joining me tonight is the man fresh from a very fierce race in Laro Peche, Honorable Norbert Mao, Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs, now incoming Member of Parliament for Laro Peche, President General of the Democratic Party, plus he's also bidding for the speakership. It's no longer a rumor. The people have requested. Well, Council Benjamin Katana, Treasurer National Inter-Platform, is also joining us tonight, together with Honorable Ssemujju Nganda, Secretary General of the PFF, and Member of Parliament, Kira Municipality. We expect Honorable Ofono Pondo to join us in the course of our discussion. Good to have you all, and a very good evening.
Thank you.
I'll start with you, Council Katana. By the look of things, it appears you've lost Masaka. Was your jubilation short-lived? And what are the chances that you can salvage the situation, your victory that was snatched?
Well, I think the events in Masaka are part of a wider context where the people can vote, but someone else will determine who should represent them. In fact, in other places, even not through a recount, we have had, where the Honorable Ssemujju and I live, we have had a third person in a contest being declared the winner as
for the mayorship, right?
For the mayorship. So I think the wider context is that we have seen state institutions, including Electoral Commission and the courts of law, gradually losing their independence and capacity to discharge their duties fairly and in a neutral manner, and they have been captured by powerful individuals who now use them as weapons to do politics. And exactly that's what transpired in the particular race in Masaka. We have even had worse examples in Mukono for the LC5 chairperson, where the returning officer declared the winner and after a few minutes declared another winner, which is quite unprecedented. So the events in Masaka, in my view, are not just a problem of NUP, but a problem of our politics, and politics in a context where the rules have now been pushed to the background, and it is now might that is the key determinant of who leads which area.
Can you redeem or can you salvage Masaka?
Well, there are especially legal steps that are being taken. But I think whether we are able to salvage Masaka or not, especially in view of the increasing erosion of independence of courts of judicature and other institutions, it's regardless of the fact that it's a clear-cut case, you cannot predict which direction it will take. But even if we are able to, through a court process, set aside the injustice that has been occasioned on the Honorable Nalubowa and the people of Masaka, I think it would not solve the bigger problem of state institutions being used to do politics and disadvantaging individuals that do not subscribe to the ruling party.
Honorable Mao, This has been quite a peculiar election. Before we delve into other cases, the case of Masaka is rather intriguing. Do you fathom, as Minister for Justice, that a magistrate could find tampered ballot boxes and order a recount to happen?
First, Simon, I'm happy to be back on the front line after very long absence.
You still have your seat?
Yes, I'm a permanent honorary member of the front line. And I thank you for doing your bit to shed light on issues. And it is up to the Ugandans to decide whether they want to see what you have made to be in the open or to continue ignoring. Your job is simply to shed light. So today we should move away from generalizations. Let's deal with the
specifics.
The good thing is that looks like everybody is complaining. I heard the president complaining that the opposition is cheating. I heard the opposition saying that the NRM is cheating. But elections are really not about the candidates. It's not about the parties. It's about the citizens. After all, we are a republic. And in a republic, our form of government is a representative government. Since not all of us can preside over the country, our constitution requires that we delegate the powers of the sovereign people of Uganda to elected people. Now, in Uganda, we had a big war in the Luweero Triangle, and the reason was election rigging. And therefore, the NRM continues to be on trial because they embraced free and fair election as their main cause for going to the bush. And they did it in a patriotic spirit because, after all, the Uganda patriotic movement didn't really have any votes to be stolen by anybody in 1980. The votes that were stolen were the votes of the Democratic Party. But the NRM and their armed wing, the NRA, decided to raise the banner of that armed struggle, and the cause was to sanitize the politics of Uganda. Therefore, Ugandans must continue to talk about their expectations of the NRM. And where there is evidence that the NRM falls short of that expectation, that debate must continue. After all, Uganda is going to be around for a very long time until Jesus Christ comes back to claim the earth. Let me tell you what I know about Masaka.
Right.
Because not everybody is telling the whole story. Number one, it is wrong to act as if there are candidates who can't win, and therefore force must be used, fraud must be used so that they can win. I know for a fact that the NRM candidate, that is
Justine
Namere, actually departed for Masaka several years ago. You remember, she was quite a character in Kampala. Then all of a sudden, she woke up and just went to Masaka, started doing a lot of media work, doing a lot of rural activism, being very outspoken about subversion of government programs. In other words, she started championing popular causes. Therefore, to talk about her as if she didn't have any kind of following is also unfair. she definitely built that following because of her activities, starting some small TV station, being very active. Now, what I know is that the magistrate based his decision on some facts which were brought before him, namely that when some ballot papers, ballot boxes were being taken to the central point where they were supposed to be gathered, the people carrying those ballot boxes were attacked by people whose identities we still don't know in detail. In short, there was a distortion. So the magistrate realized that because of that violent attack on election officials by those who thereby waylaid those ballot boxes, it was necessary to order a full recount.
Right.
The lawyers may split hairs about precedent and whether a magistrate really can order a recount where votes have been tampered with and so on and so forth. But the truth of the matter is that there are some facts which are not in the public view. If boxes of ballots are being taken to where they are supposed to be gathered, and then those delivering the boxes are attacked, I think that's a legitimate reason to question what...
Yeah, but legally, precedent, I think, overrides everything. The Ngomani maybe a Nima precedent.
As you know, we have precedent, but we also have facts that are well known. I do not want to comment on that because the matter has now gone to the High Court. I think that is now sub judice. But tonight I just want to say that in Masaka, goons attacked those who were delivering ballot boxes with results. And that affected the final pronouncement that was overturned.
Before I get to Honorable Ssemujju,
the High Court will determine...
Yes, what appears quite bizarre is that in some boxes, it was discovered that there were only ballot papers ticked in favor of one candidate. Do you find that believable?
That is not possible. I do not think that it is possible to have a box in which all the ballots are ticked in favor of one candidate. There was definitely more than one candidate. If that were the case, they should have counted it. But I can tell you, those scenarios unfolded even in my own election as a young MP in 1996. And if I do not think the magistrate is so biased as to not even have the interests of the general public at heart, that he ignores that. I do not know whether it is the magistrate who reported that or it is the journalists who reported that. You are bringing it to my attention now. But I can tell you that in 1996, I was winning by close to 2,000 votes. Then we were told, and the law supported it, that there would be voting in so-called restricted areas, namely the front line. And ballots were brought in envelopes by helicopter. And we respect the law. So we sat to see what those ballots would do.
Is it the law or collusion?
It was the law.
To defile the law?
In my case, it was the law, which was passed by the legitimate legislature. Until we discovered that the ballot papers were photocopied, so we really had to be observant. And also until we discovered that indeed they used the army payroll instead of the voters register, because some dead soldiers apparently voted and they had not been deleted from the payroll. I think let us really deal with the actual facts. The media was there, and I'm sure they were filming everything. I do not know whether you have some pictures you can show us where one box. Yeah, I think it would be helpful if it is shown. Because we as I said, our goal is really not to serve the interests of the parties that went to the contest, but we want to serve the interests of the people who need a representative in parliament.
Thank you. Honorable Ssemujju, to what extent does the massacre scenario typify what has become of elections?
The election that took us to parliament in 2011, there was a recount in Rubaga North.
Kasibante.
At what is that, Mwanga 2? I went there as a friend, and the Honorable Elias Lukwago, the Lord Mayor, was the lawyer for Moses Kasibante. In massacre, they must thank God they even allowed them to inspect. We arrived at Mwanga 2. They are military, police. Lukwago and myself were near beaten until when we ran away. But this is a lawyer who went to represent a candidate during a recount. We were chased. And the person chasing us was Katongore Singh, who was a candidate and a party. But the military just joined him. So we left, and I think Kasibante followed. So that recount happened without the legal representation of Kasibante, and later on Kasibante himself. And he was unlucky. When he complained, he was arrested and taken to Luzira. I went to stand surety for him in another court, not Mwanga. I think there's another court there in Mengo. And the magistrate there said, you, Ssemujju, you are not substantial, so you cannot... So these things have happened. For me, what worries me is not massacre, but the scale at which these things are happening. Because the one of Kasibante, I have never seen that you go, the lawyer is chased, other colleagues who have come are also chased, even the candidate himself is chased. When we were being sworn in, Parliament was following alphabetical orders. But I think Katongole feared that there can be a court process that may stop him. So he was put in the first batch of those that were sworn in to make sure that he has entered Parliament. Institutions of the state, I remember, I have said this many times, when we were handling the constitutional amendment, the removal of age limit. My friend Mawanda had just been elected during a by-election.
Michael.
I think he was declared like today, and in the evening he's gazetted. You remember how many days it took and how many quarreling it took to gazette Narukoland for him to be sworn in. So my worry, as Council Katana said, is not just because of what happened in Masaka. What happened in Masaka just illustrates the point at which we are as a country. And the point the Honorable Norbert makes is a very good point. And I have said before, elections was meant to be a national project where we've made genuine mistakes, we keep improving. Because this is a national project that today we are just beneficiary, tomorrow will not be there. If you asked me, these are the worst elections in our history. Candidates are crying, they are being beaten. Even as I speak to you today, candidates who are in a Tari Center in Wakiso, they don't see where tarring is taking place. They just come and announce NRM, you complain, they beat you and move you out. So the institutions have now been fully captured. That magistrate in Masaka will not be different from the one who presided over the recount of Moses Kasivante and one who ordered Kasivante to be taken to Luzira for the next 3 months, that he was being sectarian. He was speaking about a Muyindi. But a Muyindi had stolen his victory. Even where Kasivante voted from, where he works, there is a polling station just outside Burangi. They changed him and gave him 0. And when he complained, they said, you are being sectarian. So your place is Luzira. So there is a context.
Okay, is it more of the past or?
Things are getting worse. Things are getting worse. I have councillors in my constituency who went through. They have their declaration forms. They announced to other people. And then NRM people keep saying, even if we fail, we are going to be announced. And I am told you have had meetings in Ichira of RDC, of ISO, of Electoral Commission officials, and an order has been issued that please, I am told of a case today of Gombe where all councillors who went through were NUP, 26. Said, okay, NUP, you can give them 10. NRM takes 16. That has happened in Wakiso. So all the 26 were NUP.
If I could just interrupt you. Honorable Mao, are you aware of these machinations? There was an incident.
The party leader,
He was also complaining
of that. We have got DP candidates who won according to the tallies of results from polling stations. So these specific cases have got to be addressed. I've even shared some evidence with the chairman of the Electoral Commission where a presiding officer was busy ticking ballots from his desk, but he was unaware that he was being filmed.
As Minister of Constitutional Affairs then, what kind of billing, what kind of mark would you give this election? Or these are isolated incidents?
I don't want to say these are isolated incidents. I simply want to look at the specific cases. I do not think I can defend a presiding officer who is taking ballots, and the chairman of the Electoral Commission has promised to take action against such people. There are the constables who really were like statues at the polling stations. They were virtually helpless. In some places, there were those who apparently had powers to override even what was going on in the polling stations. Now, those are illegal activities, and they should be called by that proper name. We cannot.
Yeah, but the scale alone would give a bad score to the entire election.
I think you may be talking like if you're comparing road accidents and airplane crashes, because airplane crash kills so many people at a go, so you would assume that actually more people die in airplane crashes than road accident. Yet the reverse is true. So I do not want us to reduce the debate by saying, Minister of Justice, on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you put the integrity of Uganda's elections? I think it is good to look at what we want to measure. If we are looking at the integrity of EC officials, I think they fell below average, because they are the ones who are supposed to really defend the process. They are the legitimate authorities. Now, if you can allow to be overrun by an RDC and so on, or any other security agent, that is a major failure. But I also have to talk about cases where election officials had the spine to stand up. I talk about Tochi constituency. I went there in person, and when I heard that there were some attempts to smuggle fictitious DR forms. So when I arrived, I requested to meet the returning officer. The NRM candidate was furious. Then I told him, come and be part of the meeting because we are trying to solve a problem. Let's attack the problem. Let's not attack each other. I don't think it is my duty to attack a candidate or attack a political party. But if there is a problem, and the returning officer said, well, I suspect that my assistant has been compromised because they delivered 7 envelopes which were unsealed, purportedly having DR forms from polling station. So the returning officer ordered that assistant to put those 7 envelopes aside for the simple reason that they were unsealed. And then this assistant spoke on the PA system, telling whoever was present in the hall that, look, I'm being stopped from tallying these new results that have just come. In other words, she was insubordinate. So when that became clear, then eventually those DR forms were not tallied because they were fake. They had been manufactured. In Kampala, I got reports that some presiding officers were selling the ballot papers, that a book of 50 ballots was being sold, some for as high as 5 million shillings. So I think we should really talk about the Electoral Commission, because that is the body that has the mandate.
Sorry, I interjected Honorable Ssemujju's submission. Honorable, we're talking the integrity of elections, citing the cases from Honorable Mao. Do you imagine this election fell short in every aspect, or there are aspects that you'd score as good?
I have in the past isolated the mistakes that are not deliberate. I don't want to blame people for those sort of mistakes. What should worry everybody is that many of the things that happened were deliberate. Because the Electoral Commission in the past have made mistakes, bona fide mistakes. But this time, I will start in my area. You get NRM people complaining that NRM is unfair to us because they were paying electoral officials in 100,000 per day. And the intention initially for the NRM, they wanted their children to be the one employed, leave alone the cheating. But we've worked for this party. So they started changing presiding officer. I even called the returning officer, not returning officer, there is an assistant, somebody who is in charge of Chile. And I said, you guys, why are you changing presiding officers overnight? So that's how they ended up with the presiding officer. Some of them unable even to tally and write and count and write on the DR forms. So at some polling stations, our only people are now the ones helping Electoral Commission to write. The machines failed, but some of the people who were deployed are people who had not been trained at all. So it's not an election. I want to convince myself that the Electoral Commission was in charge. I have not seen, witnessed any election in which the Electoral Commission has been overrun like this time. I am telling you now, I don't know why you journalists, when you go to tally centers like Wakiso, you focus at the returning officer. You don't interest yourself in what is going on in other rooms surrounding. Because I know for a fact in Wakiso, tallying is not happening in the tally center itself. It's happening somewhere else. Even as I speak to you now, I have evidence that candidates are being asked to pay money to be declared by those who are tallying outside the tally center. So this election is the worst in our history. It's the worst.
Council Benjamin Katana, when you look at the pattern of what has characterized this election, do you imagine there was a choreography that targeted the National Unity Platform?
Well, there was indeed a scheme to disadvantage, first of all, National Unity Platform, but also the other parties that are in the opposition, not restricted to the NUP. And I think for you to get a better appreciation of the situation, you need to look at the cycle from the time of compiling the register, the nominations. I'm sure you record, or Ugandans record the number of people who were unfairly eliminated from the process of nominations in Bukedea and elsewhere. I am sure the nation was following closely the unfairness, the role of the military in the campaigns. And on polling day, I think it went out of control. You had, and especially at Taring, here at the Kampala Tari Center, even being seen to have declaration forms was a crime. You are picked by soldiers and taken away. And the intention was to make sure that whatever they want to announce cannot be challenged. So I believe that whatever transpired in this process was not accidental. It was planned and sanctioned. The Electoral Commission, certainly as a duty bearer, takes a big blame.
But do you factor in the submission or the argument of Honorable Mao about allegations that there is a group of self-seeking political supporters who waylaid, for instance, in Masaka, ballot boxes?
Well, I don't know if the Honorable Mao is making reference to confidential information that is known to him by virtue of his position as a minister and not known to the public, but he also doesn't seem to have information of the ballot boxes that only had ballot papers ticked in favor of only one candidate. So the people who gave him information seem to have given him only one side of the information. But that particular piece of information is not known to the public, including myself, has not been reported by the media. And in fact, even if you had focused on the facts as reported to the public, is that even when the magistrate found that the boxes had been tampered with, a number of them, he chose to depart from the precedent and continued with the process of recount, clearly depicting a picture of a person that was determined to reach at a certain result, not necessarily executing the duty.
So is it the individual or the institution of the judiciary?
No, I think the individual is also a victim of a system. I don't think he's a bad person or a good person. One doesn't have to be, but it's the system that is built now on a foundation of injustice and aimed at disadvantaging whoever is challenging the NRM government.
Honorable Mao, at the end of the day, when all is said and done, does this feed into your pet subject of electoral reforms? And is it time, as the dust settles now, to kickstart a conversation on integrity of elections and reforms in elections?
The question demands that we should first ask, why do we hold elections? Why are elections in Uganda a matter of life and death? After all, elections, as I've frequently said, are supposed to be a competition to serve. Who can serve better than the other? But it is also a sad commentary on why people go into elections in the first place. Starting from the integrity of the candidates themselves. If you have candidates who even forge results in order to be nominated, you have candidates who blatantly bribe voters, just distributing cash, then it means that the goal of the leaders who present themselves is not necessarily to serve really. It is something else. And so if you have a large pool of candidates who are basically stranded in life. And so the election is a lifeline. Then they will do anything. So we cannot think about sanitizing our elections without looking at the kind of society we are trying to build. And electoral reforms is only one of those things. MPs were pressurizing me and the government about legal reforms. But we have very good laws. All these things that were done.
You didn't say this initially.
Pardon?
You didn't say this initially.
But I said it. I said it that if we are looking at systemic overhaul, which is really my position and the position of the party I lead, that we should really move away from the winner-take-all kind of politics. To me, that is a legitimate debate. For instance, introducing proportional representation, making elections a lot cheaper and quicker. Through proportional representation, you would be able to hold an election in about 6 weeks maximum, and people vote for parties, and every party presents a list. For instance, in Kampala, we have got 10 seats. Obviously, there would now be more, because we propose that an MP should represent 150,000 Ugandans. Now, by that count, Kampala is the most cheated area in Uganda. Kampala, with all the numbers, cannot have only 10 members of parliament. So there would be no need to even demarcate small constituencies. You just have an electoral area, you call it Kampala, and then you allocate the seats that they should have in parliament. So the NUP would present, assuming Kampala has 3 million voters, that means, 3 million people, then you would have 20 members of parliament. So every party would present a list of its candidates according to their decision as to who qualifies to represent that party in parliament. Then people would vote for the party. All the other parties would present their lists. Then, depending on the proportion of votes a party has received, the seats are allocated. And that will ensure that you, for instance, don't end up with a member of parliament who has got 25%, making the 75% votes actually to be useless. Every vote begins to count. It will also help to reduce the number of MPs. For instance, if you have 45 million Ugandans and an MP represents 150,000, it means you'll have 300 members of parliament automatically. And then you decide how the list will be formulated in order to capture, for instance, women. If you want to have 50-50, then you use what the experts call the zebra list system. If you start with a woman, then the next candidate should be a man, and so on and so forth. You can then think about how to balance the issues of special interest groups. This is a debate that we should have. Otherwise, the next elections may even be worse.
Well, thank you. We'll be taking a very short break, and when we return, Honorable Ssemujju Nganda will be telling us which questions the country ought to interrogate if we are to sanitize the elections going forward after the break.